Hey parents, do you have potty on the brain? That's okay, we're here to help. We chatted with Dr. Sinead Dufour. She's a pelvic health physiotherapist and a professor at McMaster University. She also is the director of pelvic health and runs her own practice out of the Womb in Burlington, Ontario. She shares with us all her tips on how to prepare your child when they're ready, how to prepare the home, how to avoid poop anxiety, big seat, little seat, sit down, stand up, turn around, never mind. And also, is bribing okay? More importantly, she gives us all the information we need to prepare our children for success. Before we begin, that little subscribe button, we'd love it if you clicked it and joined our parenting community. Now, here is Dr. Sinead Dufour to speak with you on potty training.
So, what's often on people's mind, once they've kind of adapted a little bit to motherhood or parenthood, and now they're thinking, okay, it's time to see if we can get our little one learning how to use the bathroom. And really what my first piece of advice is to not think of it as this discrete magic point in time. It really should be kind of thought of as sort of a continuum of progression. And one of the most important things I would say to parents is trying to, from a very early age, just normalizing these biological processes, right? So we void, which is urinating, we defecate, that's of course having a bowel movement. And one of the things we see when we work with children who haven't done well with their potty learning and are now having some pediatric pelvic health issues is that there actually is quite a bit of fear and a negative relationship established around toileting and particularly having bowel movements. So I'm going to say a few points about this as I go on, but certainly to start off, the more positive we can have these associations right from day one, and even if that means you're changing a diaper that was particularly messy and maybe not the most pleasant, but trying not to convey the perspective of sort of disdain with that, with your baby, because, we are starting to get some literature in the science that's showing a connection between negative attitudes towards cleaning dirty diapers and then the children adopting really negative attitudes towards that natural behavior. So that's one thing I would say. The other thing we always see is that toilet learning tends to not be very successful if there are any underlying issues with constipation. So this is a really important thing, and if there are any signs that your baby's gastrointestinal tract isn't working well, that they're straining with their bowel movements, this is definitely something you're going to want to sort out before you even attempt to do the potty learning, because we consistently see if this is an issue, the potty learning doesn't work very well. And this is for a variety of reasons, but a big one is that when we are constipated, there's a lot of inflammation in the gut, and there's crosstalk between the gut and the bladder gets inflamed, and then the bladder's not working properly, and there's accidents, and it just doesn't set us up for success. So at that very early stage with the gut health, it usually is working with someone who has some expertise in nutrition, maybe a really good naturopath, to try to sort some of that out. The other piece is to really make sure that when children are learning how to use the bathroom, that they are learning in a place that they can sit in a squatted position. So this is where when we're just learning how to use the toilet, a potty is definitely preferred over a toilet that has the insert. Certainly graduating to that is no problem, but sitting down has a few benefits when we're learning how to have a bowel movement and when we're learning how to avoid. And where it has a benefit for a bowel movement is when we're in a squatting position, our colon is actually a straight line. So the fecal matter just has a straight shot out, and it requires almost no effort to push it out. Whereas when we are in a typical seated position, which is more like a 90-degree angle here rather than a 120-degree angle here, actually the colon is kinked and you need to push around a corner. So you're going to have to push a lot harder, right? So definitely we want to set up people feeling safe and comfortable and bowel movements being pain-free so that these negative behaviors don't set up. And one of the ways they can set up is not squatting when you're having a bowel movement. It will hurt and it can injure the bowel. So that's an important thing to consider. Another really important thing to consider is our pelvic floor and our bladder muscle are two muscles that sort of are tango partners. And when our pelvic floor relaxes, that's when our bladder muscle contracts. And it's when our bladder muscle contracts that the pee comes out. So actually when we sit down and the pelvic floor relaxes, then the bladder muscle can contract and the pee comes out. So another thing I see, particularly with boys, because we see higher incidence of toilet learning not going well, chronic constipation, and longer term of bedwetting and accidents in boys. And what I'm often seeing when I'm tracking back in the history, that the toilet learning was not done in a way that the individuals were calm and sitting and feeling safe. They were in bathrooms standing up to learn how to void. And this doesn't work very well. That's certainly a behavior that you can move on to once your system knows what it's doing, but that isn't a way that we would want to train people how to go to the bathroom. So we definitely want to be normalizing the process. We want to de-dramatize it. We want to make sure that, children are feeling sort of safe with anything that has to do with toileting functions. And so a good way to do that is really helping to make sure we set up the anatomy properly. And then one last thing I'll mention, there's always this question around, is it okay to kind of bribe my child? Is it okay to use treats to try to encourage sort of certain behavior? And, my answer back to that, which would be supported with the literature, is while there's some literature to show that a really specific reward that's very context specific and really, really meaningful to a child might assist with certain behavior, when we're just learning a basic physiologic function, I would argue you shouldn't need that degree of motivator. So as long as we're kind of handling things with this approach right from the beginning, you shouldn't need that. And certainly at the womb, we actually run a toilet learning workshop where we go into this in much more detail. And we actually walk through a very specific sort of 3-day method to facilitate learning with children so that they can learn how to trust their own bodies, how to understand the signals that their bodies are giving them, so they can effectively learn how to toilet within a couple of days. And this helps us to avoid this whole sort of dog and pony show of trying to have our children sitting on the potty every hour and peeing just in case. And these behaviors that go on for quite a long time, which aren't effective and just set people up for problems.
I personally attended Dr. Sinead's workshop back before my daughter was 1 year old, and it really was amazing, and it really did work in our home. I hate to say it, but potty training was actually kind of easy for us. Don't kill me. And stick it out if you're having trouble. It's okay. You will get there. Every child is unique and they go at their own pace. And don't be afraid to seek out resources. If you have any questions for us, you can put them in the comments below. And if you have any questions for Dr. Sinead, you can reach up to the womb. I'll include their info below. And they're hoping to make the workshop available through their website eventually, maybe a couple emails suggesting it, and they'll do it a little sooner for you. Thanks so much for watching. Best of luck, and we'll see you next time.